The night was so quiet that even the rustle of leaves felt like a secret. In the little village where lanterns glowed faintly along the dirt paths, where homes were stitched together by laughter and hardship, Ira had grown up believing life was simple, predictable, and destined. She was the daughter of a farmer who had nothing to his name but honesty, and though she often dreamed of a world beyond the cracked walls of their cottage, she had never stepped far enough to know it. But fate has a way of ripping holes through even the smallest, safest corners. That evening, the air carried a tension she couldn't place. She had just finished drawing water from the well when she heard the sound, a low groan, barely human, like someone fighting to stay alive. At first she thought it was her imagination, but then it came again, louder, raw with pain. Clutching her bucket, Ira followed the sound toward the edge of the forest, where shadows pressed thick and restless. There, sprawled against the roots of an ancient tree, lay a man she had never seen before. His shirt was torn, his chest slick with blood, his breath shallow as though death itself was dragging him inch by inch. Her heart slammed. She knew the risks. This could be a criminal, a danger, someone hunted. Villagers whispered of bandits, of city men who brought ruin wherever they went. And yet, when his eyes fluttered open, meeting hers with a desperation that stripped him of all pride, she couldn't walk away. "Help me," he rasped, his voice barely a thread of sound. Ira dropped to her knees beside him, torn between fear and instinct. His hand, cold and trembling, caught her wrist. It was not the grip of a predator, it was the clutch of someone on the edge of losing everything. "I can't," she stammered, panic clawing her throat. "If anyone finds you here, please," he whispered again, his eyes closing. Something broke inside her then. Against reason, against caution, Ira tore at her shawl, pressing the fabric against his wound. Her own hands shook as they grew wet with his blood, but she pressed harder, praying her trembling strength could keep him tethered to life. The hours that followed blurred into a battle she had never fought before. She dragged him, inch by inch, to the abandoned hut by the fields, hiding him from anyone who might pass. She stayed through the night, washing his wound with the little water she had, whispering to him though he never answered. At dawn, she realized the weight of her choice. She had given herself to danger, to secrecy, to a stranger whose name she did not even know. Days passed, and with each sunrise his breathing grew steadier. He would wake for moments, his gaze sharpening with fragments of strength. Sometimes he tried to speak, but she hushed him. "Save your words. You need your life more." Yet one night, when the moon carved silver into the roof of the hut, he finally spoke clearly. Why are you helping me?" She froze. The question she had avoided answering even in her own mind now hung heavy in the air. She should have said it was duty, or pity, or fear of what would happen if she did not. But none of those were true. Looking into his eyes, eyes that carried storms she could not name, she found no words at all. Instead, she whispered, "Because if I don't, no one else will." And in that silence, something irreversible began. What Ira did not know was that the man she had saved was no ordinary wanderer. He was a billionaire CEO, hidden from the world by betrayal and blood, his empire teetering on the edge of collapse. She did not yet know his name, nor the storm he carried in his soul. All she knew was that she had given a piece of herself she could never take back. And he, though too weak to say it, had already decided he would never forget the girl who had saved his life when he was nothing but a broken shadow. The mornings in the village were usually filled with the clatter of buckets, the calls of farmers, and the laughter of children running barefoot across the dusty paths. But for Ira, every dawn in those days carried a secret weight. She would rise before anyone else, slip through the mist, and return to the old hut with food she dared not explain and medicines she could barely afford. Each time she pushed open the wooden door, she prayed she would still find him alive. He was no longer a ghost clinging to breath. His face, once pale with pain, now held color. His eyes stayed open longer. His voice, though gravelly, carried more command with each day. Yet he remained a mystery. He had not told her his name, nor where he came from, nor why men with knives might have wanted him gone. But secrets had a way of pressing against silence. One morning, as she dabbed cool cloth against his fever, he caught her wrist. His grip was firmer now, his eyes sharp in the dim light. "You risk too much," he said. "Why do you come back? again and again. Do you not fear what I might be? Ira's lips parted, but no answer came. She had asked herself the same question every night, but no answer had satisfied her heart. Finally, she said quietly, I am afraid. But more afraid of letting someone die when I could help. His gaze lingered on her, and in that stillness, she felt the pull of something vast and unspoken. Days turned into weeks. He began to move, first sitting up, then taking small steps around the hut. His body healed, but his eyes never softened. They carried shadows, as though he had seen too much of the world's cruelty to ever fully rest. Yet with Ira, the shadows sometimes eased, if only for moments. He watched her more than she realized. The way she hummed softly while preparing broth. The way her hands trembled when she thought he wasn't looking, betraying how much the burden of secrecy weighed on her. The way she always left before the village woke, to protect both him and herself. One evening, as she prepared to leave, he asked suddenly, did they know? Your family, your people. Her breath caught. No. If they knew I was hiding a wounded stranger, they would turn you over, or worse, they would cast me out. His jaw tightened. Then why bear such risk for me? The words rose from her chest before she could stop them. Because the first night I found you, you held my hand as if it was the only thing anchoring you to life. I couldn't let go. Even now, I can't. Silence stretched between them, heavy, charged. His hand moved as though to reach for hers, then stilled. Instead, he said in a voice lower than the night air, one day, Ira, you may regret this. But she only shook her head. One day, I may not. That's enough. She left before he could answer. Trouble came sooner than either expected. It started with whispers in the village. Strangers had been seen in nearby towns, men in black cars asking questions, flashing photographs no one dared stare at too long. One afternoon, Ira overheard two merchants muttering by the well. They say he's from the city. Powerful man. Crossed the wrong people. Alive or dead, they want him found. Ira felt her stomach twist. She returned to the hut with fear clawing her insides. The man was seated by the window, watching the fields stretch endlessly beyond. She burst out before she could stop herself. They are looking for you. He turned, his eyes unreadable. They will never stop. Her breath shook. Then what will you do? For the first time, he spoke with a sharpness that cut through the walls. What I must. Survive. Take back what is mine. And destroy those who would see me buried. The words chilled her. In that moment, she understood. This was not merely a man clinging to life. This was someone who had known power, who had commanded it, and who carried vengeance like a weapon in his veins. She stepped back, fear flickering in her chest. He noticed it, the way her eyes widened, the way her hand hovered near the door. Something in his expression faltered, just for an instant. I will not harm you, Ira, he said quietly. You saved me when no one else would. That debt, I will never forget. Her fear softened, but did not vanish. She nodded once, then whispered, then don't let them find you. Because if they do, they will not stop at you, they will take everything from me too. He looked at her for a long time, and in that gaze was a vow unspoken. That night, while Ira slept in her small bed at home, he stood alone in the hut, staring out at the dark horizon. His strength had returned, his past was waiting, but for the first time in years, he wondered if destiny had shifted the moment a village girl laid her trembling hands over his wounds. And though he had not yet told her his name, though she did not know he was once a king of steel and glass towers, he whispered it into the silence anyway, because one day, she would know everything. Adrian Kale. The rhythm of the village had always been predictable. Planting in spring, harvest in autumn, quiet winters where everyone huddled close to fire and family. But in those weeks, Ira felt the ground beneath her life shifting. Every glance lingered too long, every conversation hushed too quickly when she approached. She carried her secret in her chest like a flame, burning hotter the longer it stayed hidden. And Adrian, if that was truly his name, though she had only once overheard him whisper it to himself, was no longer the broken shadow she had first found. He had recovered. His back was straight again, his voice steady, his eyes sharper than ever. He no longer looked like a man near death, but one who had tasted it and returned with fire. Still, he never left the hut. Not yet. One evening, As Ira brought him bread and herbs, she found him standing at the window, his silhouette cut against the pale sky. He did not turn when she entered. "They are close," he said. Her heart thudded. "Who?" "The ones who hunt me. I can feel them moving. They ask questions in nearby towns. They follow trails. It is only a matter of time before they come here." Fear twisted through her stomach. "Then you must leave, tonight, if they find you, and leave you to face their suspicion." His voice cut through hers, sharper than she expected. He turned, his eyes burning. "You think they will not question you? That they will not see your hands stained with my survival? No, Ira, if I go, you are already condemned." Her throat tightened. She had known, somewhere deep, that this was true. But hearing it aloud carved a deeper terror into her bones. Adrian stepped closer, his voice softening. "I will not allow harm to come to you. Not for what you have given me." Ira's breath caught. She had never been so close to him. Close enough to see the faint scar that crossed his jaw, close enough to feel the force of his presence. For a moment, the world outside the hut ceased to exist. But before she could answer, there was a sound. A twig snapping. Both of them froze. Adrian's gaze flicked to the door, his hand instinctively reaching for the knife he had kept hidden beneath the table. Ira's pulse hammered as shadows passed across the cracks in the hut's wood. Voices murmured, low and unfamiliar. She pressed herself against the wall, every nerve screaming. Adrian moved like a predator, silent, controlled. He gestured for her to stay hidden, then slipped toward the door. His voice was a whisper meant only for her. "Do not make a sound." The door creaked open a fraction, and moonlight spilled across the floor. Through the gap, Ira glimpsed two figures outside, their coats dark, their stances purposeful. "Search every house," one of them said. "The man can't have gone far." Her chest seized. Adrian's body tensed, but he did not step out. He waited until the voices drifted away, fading into the distance. Only then did he close the door and return. His jaw was tight, his eyes storm dark. "They are here," he said. "The hunt has reached your village." Ira clutched her shawl, trying to steady her shaking hands. "What do we do?" His gaze softened when it met hers. For the first time, his hand reached out, not to command, not to defend, but to anchor. He brushed his fingers lightly against hers, grounding her. "We survive. Together." The word lingered between them. Together. The following days were filled with tension that felt like living under a blade. Strangers lingered near the village, their questions growing sharper. Twice, Ira's father returned home uneasy, muttering that city men had offered gold for information. "Whoever they seek must be dangerous," he said, shaking his head. "Best not to cross paths." Ira nodded, keeping her face still while her heart roared with secrets. At the hut, Adrian grew restless. He paced often, staring at maps he sketched from memory, muttering names that meant nothing to her. But at night, when the weight of silence pressed too heavy, he sometimes spoke truths. Not all, but enough for her to glimpse the man behind the shadows. "I built an empire," he confessed one evening, his voice low. "Steel, glass, power. The world bowed, but it was never enough for those closest to me. Betrayal always comes from within, Ira. Remember that." She studied him, her heart aching at the hardness in his tone. "And yet, you trust me," she whispered. His eyes met hers, steady. "Against all reason, yes." Something unspoken sparked between them then, something neither dared name. But trust was fragile, and fate was impatient. One afternoon, as Ira returned from the market, she found a woman standing near the hut. A stranger, dressed too finely for a village, her sharp eyes sweeping the fields like a hawk. Ira's steps faltered. She hid quickly behind a tree, her breath shallow as she watched the woman circle the hut, glance at the door, and then walk away with calculated grace. Ira's blood turned cold. Whoever that woman was, she was no ordinary seeker. When she told Adrian, his expression turned to stone. "Evelyn," he muttered. "They've sent her." "Who is she?" Ira asked. "Someone who once swore loyalty, and then sold me for her own gain." His voice was dark with venom. "If she is near," the noose is tightening. Ira's heart raced. What if she saw me? Adrian stepped forward, his hand brushing her cheek in a motion so sudden it made her breath tremble. His eyes bore into hers with a vow that felt carved in fire. If she lays a hand on you, I will burn the world to ashes." Her chest tightened, heat rising behind her eyes. She had never been anyone's shield, anyone's choice worth such fury. And yet, in that moment, she believed him. The air in the village grew heavy with unease. Strangers lingered at the tavern too long, questions sharpened, and children were told not to wander after dark. Ira felt eyes on her wherever she went. Even her father had begun to notice. "You've been restless, Ira," he said one night at dinner, his tired eyes narrowing. "You slip away at odd hours. Is something wrong?" Her spoon trembled in her hand. She forced a smile. "Just the fields, father. I've been helping more than usual." But she could see the doubt in his face. Secrets were fragile things, and hers was beginning to crack. At the hut, Adrian grew more restless by the day. He practiced walking with steady strength, tested the blade he carried, even pressed Ira to teach him the paths through the fields and forests. "If it comes to it, I must know every way out," he said. She wanted to ask, "What if you leave me behind?" But the words lodged in her throat. She had not yet admitted, even to herself, how deeply his presence had rooted itself in her heart. One evening, as dusk spread purple over the hills, Ira returned to the hut to find Adrian not alone. A man stood inside, one of the strangers she had seen in the village days earlier. His knife gleamed, pressed against Adrian's throat. Her cry caught before it could leave her lips. She froze in the doorway, her body trembling. The intruder's eyes flicked to her. "So, the girl who keeps him breathing." His voice was cruel. "They said someone must be feeding the ghost. And here you are." Adrian's jaw was tight, his body still though his eyes blazed. "Ira, run." The man sneered. "She won't. She's in too deep." His grip on the blade tightened. "The Empire will pay well for your corpse, Kale. But perhaps the girl pays first." It happened in a heartbeat. Ira, without thought, lunged forward. She shoved herself between the knife and Adrian, her small frame striking with desperate force. The blade caught her shoulder, fire searing through flesh, but her cry was drowned by Adrian's roar. In one motion, he overpowered the intruder, twisting the knife free and driving the man to the floor. The struggle ended with silence, Adrian standing over the body, his chest heaving, blood on his hands. Ira collapsed against the wall, clutching her wound. Pain blurred her vision, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "I couldn't let him." Adrian was at her side in an instant, his hands pressing to her wound, his voice breaking with a desperation she had never heard from him. "No, Ira, no. You were never meant to bleed for me." Her lips trembled in a faint smile. "But I chose to." Tears burned his eyes, though he hid them behind clenched teeth. "You fool. You pure, stubborn fool. Do you know what you've done? You've bound me. I owe you more than my life. And I will spend whatever remains of it making certain no one ever dares touch you again." The words sank into her fading consciousness like a vow etched in fire. They did not stay in the hut after that. The body was hidden, the blood washed away, but Adrian knew the circle was closing. "They will not stop," he told her. "And now they know you exist. You are no longer invisible, Ira. You are their leverage." Fear clutched her chest, but she did not waver. "Then let them come," she whispered. "So long as I stand beside you." Adrian shook his head, his hand trembling as it brushed her cheek. "No, you deserve peace, safety, a life untouched by the storms I carry. I should leave you now, before it's too late." Her eyes filled, but her voice was steady. "And if I told you it already is too late?" For a moment, he was silent, torn between the man he had been, the ruthless CEO who built empires and burned enemies, and the man this village girl had seen beneath the ashes. Finally, he said, almost brokenly, "You have given me what all the world's wealth never could. A reason worth bleeding for." And he kissed her then. Not with gentleness, but with the fire of a man who had tasted death and finally found something worth living for. But their moment was short-lived. By dawn, word had spread. Someone in the village had betrayed them. Perhaps it was the merchant who had noticed Ira buying more food than her family needed, or the neighbor who had seen her slip out at odd hours. Whoever it was, the damage was done. Men in dark coats arrived with carts, questioning, threatening, offering gold for answers. Ira's father confronted her that night, his face pale with fear. Tell me the truth, Ira. Have you brought danger into this house? Tears filled her eyes. She could not lie anymore. But before she could speak, a sound split the night. Boots against earth, shouts, the crash of doors. They had come. Adrian burst into her home, his blade already drawn, his eyes wild. They've found us. We must go. Now. Her father's face twisted in horror, but before he could stop them, Adrian pulled Ira into the storm. Through fields and forest, they ran, the hunt snapping at their heels. Ira's lungs burned, her wound throbbed, but Adrian never let her stumble. His hand was iron around hers, his vow unspoken yet burning with every step, I will not lose her. And when at last they stood cornered at the edge of the cliff, torches closing in behind, Ira turned to him with tears streaking her face. If one of us must fall, let it be me, she whispered. Adrian's answer was a growl torn from his soul. Never. If the world wants blood, it will take mine before yours. The torches drew closer. Choices had to be made. And in that moment, Ira realized, whatever happened next, her life was no longer her own. It belonged to the man she had saved in the forest. The man who now stood ready to sacrifice everything for her. The cliff's edge was jagged beneath their feet, the night air thick with smoke and the shouts of men closing in. Torches lit the forest like a river of fire. Ira's heart thundered in her chest. Adrian's hand was steady in hers, but his eyes were burning, calculating, alive with the fire of a man who had nothing left to lose except her. The leader of the pursuers stepped forward, his voice booming across the night. Hail Adrian. By order of the crown, you are to surrender. The girl may live if you give yourself up. Ira felt her knees weaken. They know his name. They know. Her gaze snapped to him, questions spilling from her lips. Hail, Adrian, you're not just some stranger. Who are you? His jaw clenched, his eyes refusing to leave the enemy ahead. Finally, he said, low and raw, I am the man who once commanded half this kingdom. The one they called the Empire's Blade. A CEO who built empires in the cities and crushed rivals beneath steel and fire. But tonight, he turned to her at last, his voice breaking. Tonight I am just a man begging for the chance to protect the only soul who ever saw me as more than power. Tears burned Ira's eyes. She had guessed he was important, but never this. Never a man the world hunted like prey. The soldiers advanced. Adrian stepped forward, blade flashing in the firelight. If you touch her, you will not leave this cliff alive. The leader sneered. You are one man against 30. Do not be a fool. Adrian's laugh was harsh, but there was death in it. Then 30 men will learn what a fool can do. And he launched himself into them. The fight was chaos. Steel on steel, blood spraying, shouts breaking the night. Adrian moved like a storm unleashed, his blade finding flesh, his body refusing to yield. Every strike was fueled by something greater than survival, something Ira could feel even from where she stood clutching her bleeding shoulder. He is fighting for me. But numbers were numbers, and even storms can break. A sword caught his side, another his arm. He staggered, yet he did not fall. Ira screamed his name, her voice carrying over the clash. Adrian. He turned, just for a moment, his eyes locking with hers. And in that moment, everything else faded. If I fall, remember this, he shouted, his voice like a vow carved into stone. I loved you from the moment you touched my broken body in that forest. You gave me life when I had none left. And if my empire falls, it will rise again for you. Tears blurred her vision. She couldn't let him fall. She wouldn't. With trembling hands, she picked up a fallen dagger from the ground near the cliff. Fear battled with resolve, but love won. She ran forward, slashing at the soldier closest to Adrian, the blade awkward in her grasp but burning with desperation. The man fell back, startled, and Adrian seized the opening. He tore through the line, his bloodied arm sweeping her behind him. The tide shifted. Some soldiers fell, others broke, but the leader remained, eyes glinting with cruel calculation. He lunged, his sword raised high. Adrian was ready to meet him, but then Ira saw it. The leader's second blade, hidden, angled straight for Adrian's heart. Time slowed. She didn't think, didn't breathe. She just moved. Her body collided with Adrian's, shoving him aside. The blade meant for him plunged into her instead. Her gasp was sharp, her body crumpling against his. Adrian's roar shook the night. He struck the leader down with a fury that left nothing of the man but silence. Then he caught Ira in his arms, falling to his knees with her against his chest. "No, no, no, not you," he begged, his hands pressing to her wound, his blood mixing with hers. "Not you, Ira, take me, not her." Her breath was shallow, her lips trembling into the faintest smile. "I told you, if one of us must bleed, let it be me." "Don't you dare," he growled, his tears falling onto her face. "You don't get to choose this. I do, and I choose you, always you." Her eyes fluttered. "Then, promise me, you'll live. Not as Kale Adrian, the Empire's blade, but as the man I found in the forest." He clutched her tighter, his heart shattering. "I promise, I swear it on my soul. But you are not leaving me, Ira. Do you hear me? You are not leaving me." And then, through the storm of grief, he did something no one expected. He tore a seal from his coat, a ring, heavy with the crest of his empire. Pressing it into her trembling hand, he whispered, "I was going to wait until I rebuilt what was mine. But I will not wait another second. Ira of the village, the girl who gave me life, will you be my wife?" Her tears fell, mingling with his. Her voice was weak, but it carried. Yes. Her eyes closed, but her lips curved into the softest smile, and for that heartbeat, Adrian believed she would stay with him forever. The night had bled into dawn by the time silence fell over the battlefield. The torches lay scattered, the soldiers broken, and only the whisper of the river below carried through the air. Adrian knelt on the cliff's edge, Ira's fragile body in his arms, his face streaked with dirt, blood, and tears. "Stay with me, Ira. Don't you dare close those eyes," he begged, rocking her against his chest. His voice cracked like shattered glass. "You said yes. You said yes. And I will not let death steal that from us." Her breathing was faint, but there was still breath. Still a chance. Adrian rose with her in his arms, staggering through the forest like a man possessed. Every step was agony. His side burned from a deep wound, his vision blurred, but nothing could make him stop. He remembered the hidden paths she had shown him, the herbalist's hut at the far edge of the village, the healer's whispered remedies she once laughed about. He carried all of it in his mind like scripture, clinging to the hope she had once carried for him. By the time he burst through the healer's door, his knees almost gave way. The old woman gasped at the sight of them, bloodied, broken, yet bound so fiercely together. Without a word, she took Ira from him, her hands already working with herbs, cloth, fire. Adrian refused to leave her side. He pressed his palm against Ira's, whispering words only she could hear. "You gave me breath when I was dying in the forest. Give me breath again, Ira. Don't leave me with a promise unkept." Hours bled away. The sun climbed and fell. And finally, when the healer stepped back, exhausted, Adrian held his breath. Ira stirred. Her eyes opened, slow, fragile, but alive. Adrian's heart stopped, then thundered with such force he thought it might break his chest. He caught her hand, pressing it to his lips, tears streaming freely now. "You came back to me. My stubborn, beautiful girl, you came back." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "I told you, it was too late to leave." He laughed through his tears, a sound raw with relief. "You will never leave me, Ira. Not now, not ever. Not even death dares take you from me." Weeks later, the scars remained, but they were alive. The village had changed. Fear lingered, whispers spread, but no one dared confront Adrian now. Word had already traveled. The Empire's lost heir, the man once thought dead, had risen again. Rivals trembled, and allies came crawling. Yet when the council begged him to return to the city, to reclaim the towers and thrones that were his by blood and power, Adrian looked at the girl standing barefoot in the fields and shook his head. "My empire is here," he said simply, his hand closing around hers. But Ira saw the truth in his eyes. He could not hide from what he was forever. The world would not allow it. And she, the girl who had once only known earth and harvest, could not chain him to a hut and a plow. So one evening, as the sun dipped gold across the horizon, she whispered, "Go. Rebuild what was yours. But do not go alone. Take me with you." He froze, staring at her as if she had broken the very stars. "You would leave your village, your home, Everything you've ever known. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing the scar on his cheek. I left it the moment I pulled you from the forest. My home has been with you ever since. Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he could press her words into his very bones. And then, before the rising moon, with only the whisper of the wind as witness, he slid the crest ring onto her finger again, this time not in desperation, but in promise. From this day, he vowed, there is no empire without you. There is no Kale Adrian without Ira. You are my breath, my heart, my kingdom. Her answer was soft, steady, certain. And you are mine. They left the village together. The journey was long, filled with enemies and trials, but side by side they built something greater than empire. Adrian reclaimed his place, not with the cruelty of the man he had once been, but with the compassion Ira had taught him. She became more than his wife. She was his anchor, his counsel, the voice that tempered his blade. And in every hall, every throne room, every whisper of power, one truth remained unshaken. The empire had not been rebuilt by gold, nor steel, nor blood. It had been rebuilt by love, by the village girl who gave her life to save a stranger, and the empire's heir who gave up the world to make her his queen. So when the bards sang of Kale Adrian and the girl who saved him, they did not tell the tale of a CEO who built empires or a warrior who carved kingdoms. They told the story of how, at the edge of a cliff, love chose to bleed, and in doing so, conquered everything.